Now let's deep dive into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Gil Ponce, and let's queer up the USA view. Minnesota launches LGBTQ resident survey after 30 years. A landmark effort is underway in Minnesota where a state agency is surveying LGBTQ residents to better understand the experiences and challenges faced by the community. It is the first major initiative of the Council on LGBTQIA2S+ Minnesotans formed in just last year. Executive Director Emma Watts says this feedback will help shape future policies, programs, and funding. She adds, LGBTQ+ communities have historically been understudied, underfunded, and there's a lot that we can learn. Data drives policy. We want to make sure that we're adequately serving the community and their current needs. This is Minnesota's most comprehensive queer survey in over 30 years. Back in the early 90s, then Governor Rudy Perpich formed a task force on LGBT Minnesotans. Though underfunded, the task force met 40 times and found widespread discrimination, particularly in greater Minnesota, outside of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area. The group also recommended the formation of a council, one that finally exists today. According to the latest census data, about 460,000 Minnesotan adults identify as LGBTQ. So far, more than 1,800 people have filled out the anonymous survey, which asks about safety, healthcare, community connection, and more. To ensure accessibility, paper surveys are available at Queermunity in Uptown Minneapolis. Co-founder Hilary Otey says the approach protects participants' safety. The survey closes May 31st. It's open to queer Minnesotans over 18 and to parents or guardians of LGBTQ individuals. So, at the end of the day, as somebody who fundamentally understands that data does drive policy, I think it's fundamentally a great thing, and as we know, Minnesota has been on the cutting edge of progressive policy for the past decade or so. But ultimately, kudos to the state for actually going forward and having this survey, so that way you can properly go forward and actually have the right mindset to build proper advocacy.
Do you think that, and this goes to everybody, that this is the right time for that people will honestly fill it out of fear that they will be tracked back? Right now you can track it back on all of the social media, whether you're LGBTQ or not, but it just seems right now in the face of everyone going after DEI, doing a survey at this point where everyone is so jumpy, I think it's great. I think we need the data, but are people going to be honest, and are they going to fill it out? And then what is the method that you use to determine who's LGBTQ that's filling it out, and how much of it is going to then be a right-wing group that's going to have their people fill it out to just skew things? I just question the timing on this and how you secure it and secure the names of the people that did it.
I mean, the thing is, just like the census, right? It should be more or less anonymous for the submission of it. And part of it is basically, you gather it and then you sample it with factoring in the potential bias. I mean, if no one actually, if they advocate, if right-wing actors, bad actors will call for flooding this with fake questionnaire, you will find it. You'll find the call on social media. You'll find the call on Facebook or, in Telegram chat rooms. They're not that hard to find. And for them to, and the statisticians will simply calculate that particular bias into it. And frankly, to fill it out, I don't think the right-wingers have to wear it for it. I don't even think they know what a pencil is right now.
So the National LGBTQ Task Force used to work on a trans survey before I started there. And then at my day job, where I do restaurant work, we do a lot of surveys, and I included LGBTQ as a new question and have done a few reports with that to get a new look at what LGBTQ people in the industry were saying. So just someone who's done surveying of queer people, it's a little hard to say on survey bias when you say a survey of we're just looking for queer people to tell us about them. The most likely people to survey in that scenario are people who have needs, and they're going to come out and do that. But that's also not necessarily misrepresenting our community per se. I think the big issue with surveying our community is that we're not included in enough surveys. Like I said, with my day job, we didn't ask sexual orientation before I, the queer person, was put in charge of the surveys, you know, and like, so few groups do stuff like this. You have LGBTQ MAP, which has been doing a lot of good survey work with HRC occasionally, but you're not seeing a lot of groups include asking sexual orientation and then looking at what LGBTQ people are saying in wider data. So this is a good start, considering that like we're ignored, quite frankly, in a lot of social sciences.
Well, and the way they're going about this, I think, is a little, because you have to go pick up the paperwork. So they already know that 460,000 residents identify because of a census. So you have that data. So there would be a way to blind mail those 460,000 people another survey. And it doesn't have to have anything on the envelope. So that way, when they mail it back, it can't be tracked. So there's some ways. So to your point, a lot of times we're not asked. But I also, to your point, I don't think a lot of people are going to get up, go to this place, pick up a piece of paper to then, you know, they need to get out into the community. They need to get out and do the, you know, like they used to do door to door.
Right.
So they have the information of who these people are, and to protect their safety, it needs to be controlled, obviously. But I think a lot of people right now aren't going to openly just go and fill this out because they don't feel safe. And also, they feel, well, okay, well, if there's a data breach or whatever, this can get back to me, and then somebody can use this to, you know, spew hate.
They're putting their name on the paper.
No, but it's you're forcing them to go to a place to pick up paperwork, and that's already a target because it's an LGBT center. So I think there's some trepidation, right or wrong. People's fear right now is heightened.
It'd be like doing an immigration study right now and expecting people to pick up the piece of paper only to be picked up by ICE and taken away. You know, I just feel like this is just such a time where there's so much information out about all of us that it probably doesn't make a difference. But like, it's always been a big fear of mine. If the wrong people get a hold of good information, what will they do with it? You know, and having the Doge group going into all these federal buildings and accessing databases for the IRS and everything else, you go, okay, that was supposed to be protected. We were told it was protected. But, you know, if the rule of law doesn't hold and you're not going to listen to the Supreme Court, what makes you think they can't get this data anymore? And it's just a paranoia, I guess.
It is, and they can answer this question, like, as someone who does these sorts of surveys, like, I'll sometimes have like organizers that work for me will be like, oh, well, can we have who said this and that on the survey, their phone and email? Like, no, I disconnected that because I'm not allowing us to ever figure out who said what, and for you to figure out who's queer and who's this or that, because we said in the survey at the beginning that these people were anonymous and there would be protected. Because also, I don't know, you know, if I get another job sometime or get hit by a bus, I don't want the next person to go in and try and connect it. So I'm sure they can come up with ways to show that they're making sure that your identity is not connected to the response.
But I think that's a good point. The problem is the other person on the other side. Like, I don't know that because that's not who I am. So when I get that phone call, click, right? Or somebody comes to the door, click. Sorry, not. So I think having that conversation, you know, I think what they're doing is great, and we need that information with our aging population, and you know, the LGBT, you know, task force, you know, and funding being cut. Like, just there's so many things against us. So we need the information to say what is our community failing, and I think more communities need to do this, obviously. But I think I think they need to be better at saying how they're protecting their people.
These sorts of things really do matter. So like,
absolutely.
With me, with the restaurant workers, you know, we were used to sexual harassment being a big issue for women. Black women would normally be the highest. Queer people, worse. I didn't expect that in the data. So I have no idea what they're going to find in Minnesota. You never know until you ask.
Agreed.
And it could be healthcare. It could be employment. It could be everything's doing fine and dandy. We're the best queers in the world in Minnesota. But you don't know without asking. Right.
But obviously, if they only have 1,800 out of reportedly 460,000, that's too small of a sample.
Well, remember that here's the worst thing with that 460,000. The census is just showing you couples. That's actually not. It's probably a much larger population.
Right. So then the 1,800 people that have filled out this is even smaller. So that's my point. Is that too many people either don't know how to get to it, or are too afraid,
or don't know it exists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our